Okay. Hello again, everyone. This is Ben Tonin from Metric Insights. I'm in the room with Mike Smitherman. We'll be running the webinar today.
Hey, Ben.
Glad everyone could join. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And so just for an agenda today, a couple housekeeping items. All lines are muted. Please, if you have any questions, type them into the chat window, and we'll either answer them right away or save them for the end. And also, the webinar is being recorded, and a link will be sent out afterwards, so you can view it at your leisure. And in terms of an agenda for the presentation, we're going to start with the challenges we see as endemic in the BI industry, and we're going to go over, what push intelligence is, how we're solving those challenges, and helping your organization get the right data at the right time into the hands of your users, and jump right into the good stuff with the demo, which will be led by Mike. And so to introduce these challenges in the BI industry that push intelligence is trying to solve, it really stems from and pivots around low user engagement with BI. And this is a problem that exists regardless of your organization, regardless of the industry you're in, regardless of even BI tools that you're using. Right? Gartner does a study every year that kind of goes over user adoption and engagement in enterprise scale organizations. And every year it's right around 22%, which is abysmal, right? You want your user engagement much higher than that, certainly. And so this low user engagement problem really stems from three primary issues that we've identified. The first is siloed systems within your organization. A lot of times the organization will have so many different data sources, so many different BI tools, so many different places really to go for data, that it's not practical on an end user, an end business user standpoint, day in, day out, sifting through the data. Really, it just boils down to them playing hide and seek, or you playing hide and seek with the data. The right data is out there for your users to engage with. It's just not humanly practical for them to look through everything and somehow find the right stuff at the right time. And let's say they even do find the correct dashboard or report. There's typically so many different filter combinations and ways of slicing that data and looking at it that it's very unlikely that they're going to find the diamonds in the rough. And so this is probably the most important slide. I'll bring all three up for you to see. This is probably the most important slide in terms of understanding really how Metric Insights works. Metric Insights is a platform. It's our push intelligence platform. It's completely system agnostic and based on an open plugin architecture. So you see those logos over to the left. This is really to just indicate what we can connect to, right? We can connect to BI tools. We can connect to underlying relational sources, your CRM, cloud applications, you name it, we can connect to it. And so once we connect to the necessary sources and tools within your environment, there's really three primary components to our platform in terms of it adding value, right? And the first is organization. So once we connect everything, we bring everything into a single unified portal for each user so they can find everything they're looking for in one place. We organize that content intuitively to make it easy for them to find what they're looking for efficiently and easily, simply put. And the second pillar to the platform is our ability to enrich that content. So the question becomes, once everything's in a single place, in a unified portal, nobody has to log into multiple places hunting for this data. It's all in one place. But then the question becomes, what within that unified body of content should a user be focusing on at any given time? So we answer that question by surfacing the critical data within that user's data universe that they should be focusing on right now. Right, cut out all the noise, surface the critical data they need to focus on. And we do so by uncovering anomalies, looking for exceptions, and really just bubbling up any significant data events that they should be aware of. And the third pillar to the platform is our distribution engine. And so the whole point here is to increase user engagement with BI and with the right data. And the best way to do so is to distribute this data to your users, as opposed to simply publishing a dashboard or report and hoping that they are engaging with it when they should be and in the way that they should be, because we all know that typically doesn't happen with your end user. So Metric Insights allows you to take this critical data we've identified and distribute it to your users via any channel. That can be email, SMS alerts, phone tray alerts. We have an app on the iOS and Android platforms. Really any way you want to distribute this data and in any format. And so just, I went into some detail there, but a little more detail on each one of these pillars, starting with our organization capabilities. And so when we talk about this unified portal that we provide your users, it's a personalized, customized experience for each user. We allow you to organize it in whatever way makes sense to them, catalog it, you can tag it for searching purposes, and as the BI and analytics team, you have the ability to certify content to show the user that this content has been blessed, it's been vetted by your team, they can rely on it. Moving on to the enrichment pillar, how we surface that critical data for your users to focus on. There's several different ways we can do so. The first is by looking at metric anomalies, tracking metrics over a time series basis, looking for anomalies that stand out. Second is exception reports, not necessarily time series based, but you want to take a massive data set, cut out all the noise that is irrelevant, and only look for the exceptions that are critical at that time. We allow you to do so. Change reports, identifying significant changes, update period over update period. And statistical reports, allowing you to look simply for statistical variations that are significant and that a user should be made aware of. Mike will get into that in more detail. And again, in terms of our ability to distribute data, several different ways. Whatever makes it most likely for a user to engage with the data, we can distribute data that way. You've seen the catalog view likely, which is the tile-based system. We also have what we call portal pages, which essentially is a blank canvas that you can take data components from different dashboards, different reports, different tools, take whatever you want, put it onto the empty canvas, organize it in whatever way tells the story you want to tell your users. Really think of it as Legos, taking Legos from different data components, putting them in a single canvas, organizing intuitively, telling a story. The second, obviously, is email. You can push content to your users via email and in any format, whether it's a pre-filtered dashboard, it's a metric alert chart, whatever makes sense, push it to their email. We can alert again via SMS, phone tray alerts on the app, directly within the platform, whatever makes sense to the user. Again, we have a mobile app on iOS and Android platforms. And if you have collaboration tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams, we have integration with those tools as well. And so this slide is really to help you understand when it makes sense to use metric insights versus the traditional capabilities in your BI tools. So your BI tools are great for dashboarding and data visualization and interactive data discovery. But when metric insights is really good at enhancing those value sets and those capabilities in terms of if you want time-based metric analysis or simple reporting for data that you don't necessarily have in a dashboard right now, don't want to have to go through that process, or for unified portal or content organization, and simply making it easy for users to discover relevant data that they should be aware of, and also obviously for anomaly detection, distribution, and alerting, which Mike will get into.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So it's kind of the overview of the platform that we're going to look at today. And I'm just going to jump across to my browser here. So I'm going to take you through sort of those different areas that Ben spoke about, and look at it from a couple of different personas and views that you might have in your organization. And so what you're looking at here is my browser. I'm logged into an instance of Metric Insights. It's connecting to a bunch of different data sources, BI tools, databases, SaaS applications. I think we're connected to Salesforce here as an example. And we're logged into a portal catalog view, which is showing different tiles of information. And each of these tiles is linked to a particular data source and a piece of content within that data source. And to give you an idea of the types of content that we can pull into Metric Insights, there's really sort of three main areas. The first is where we're connecting to a BI tool like a Tableau or a Click or a Looker or something like that, where there's visualizations that you want to make available from within those tools. And so an example might be, we're linking to Tableau. I have a dashboard within Tableau. If I click into that tile, as a user, I'm getting access to the live, interactive Tableau dashboard. I can slice and dice the data as I would directly within that tool, but I didn't have to know to go out to Tableau to find this piece of content. So we can connect to visualizations that exist in these other business intelligence platforms. As Ben mentioned, we're also able to report directly onto data within Metric Insights itself. So we have our own visualization and charting layer. Oftentimes there's data which you want to push out to users, but you don't necessarily have to create a complex dashboard or a complex visualization. You simply want to provide some snapshotted data in chart formats, whatever it might be, charts, tables. They're getting updated on a period that may have filters associated with them and that you want to make available to users. And again, you can do that directly within Metric Insights. This data is coming from a database in this case, and I can visualize that directly within our system and have that as a tile alongside my other data visualization tools. The third element type that we can bring in, and again, Ben touched on this, is the concept of metrics within our system. And we'll touch on these more as we go through the demo, but these are the high-level indicators that your users are probably tracking every day that really determines performance and whether there's anything going wrong that they need to go and look at in more detail. And a metric can be sourced from anywhere. It could be coming from a database. It could be coming from an existing dashboard or a report. But if I drill into this quickly, excuse me, again, it's a time series piece of information, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, that is trending those metric indicators for users to show them how they're performing. And we'll drill into metrics in a bit more detail. We'll look at how we can use them for anomaly detection and alerting as we go through this. So when you set up Metric Insights, we're connecting to these different types of data sources. We're creating tiles as we're looking at here. We're organizing those tiles on the left-hand side into a category structure that makes sense for your organization. As Ben said, there's the ability to go and tag that content as well to add an additional layer of, if you like, metadata that is ultimately searchable then for users coming into this environment, so they can easily come in and start to search for content that's relevant to them, regardless, again, of the underlying data source that might have come from. So phase one is setting up this catalog for your users. And if we switch over to another browser here, I'm actually logged in as a different user here, Avery, to show that when a user logs into the platform, they're typically coming into a restricted view based on their permissions of all the content that's available. So in this case, you'll see this user, Avery, has a subset of the categories that we have available because that's the area that she's interested in. Within those categories, there's a subset of the tiles that are relevant to her. So permissions dictate effectively what each user has access to when they log into Metric Insights and into that catalog. Now, for a lot of users, oftentimes there's a core set of this content, even though I've got access to quite a lot of content over here. There's a core set of this that I probably want to look at every day. And so there's the ability to effectively create what Ben was talking about, these portal pages that really lay out the content that is relevant for a particular user. So you can take those tiles and those different pieces of information and start to put them on a page for different groups of users. So in this case, I've taken some of our high-level metrics that we were referring to and put them on the page. I've got a set of dashboards over here that I'm actually showing interactively down the bottom that a key to this user in a sales role in this case, where I can switch between dashboards again, regardless of the underlying source that they may have come from. and also add interactivity. So if there's common filters across this content, it's easy for me to come in and filter across both metrics and dashboards and reports that I might be interested in. And so the intention here is for users where this makes sense, rather than landing them in that tile-based catalog view, you can create these highly curated pages for your users that are extremely relevant to them, that have the interactivity that they need and the content that they need to look at every day. And it's very easy to quickly consume this in a couple of minutes and figure out whether there's stuff that I want to drill into deeper. If we go back to our catalog view, when users, so we talked about restricting the content based on the user and what they're interested in and what they have permissions to see. That content can also be restricted down to the individual data within tiles as well. So we looked at this Tableau dashboard when we were logged in as an administrator. When I access this same tile as an end user, oftentimes, as Ben mentioned, there's lots of different filter values that are available typically in dashboards that we've created, but different users are interested in different combinations of those filters. And we're able to set those filters automatically for users based on mappings of permissions and security, so that each time a user opens a tile, it's going to pre-filter that dashboard or that tile to the slice of data that they're interested in, and even allow users to come in and set their own bookmarks, again based on the permissions that they have. I can go and update filter values and save those as combinations that I may want to look at every day, and easily be able to switch between those filter combinations that are relevant to me. So we try and make the content that we're providing through the portal, again, not just at the tile level, but also the sort of data level within that tile, as relevant as possible to the user. So through the portal, you see that you can start to sort of remove this or solve this game of hide and seek for users. They don't have to go to different tools to access different pieces of content. It's all in one place. It's driven by their permissions, and it's driven by the data that they're interested in looking at every day. Now, as Ben said, even though you publish this stuff all in one place, users are not necessarily going to come in here and monitor it every day. So the key is that we can start to push this information out to users as well. And there's a number of ways that we distribute content within the platform. If we sort of continue our flow here, content distribution can either be done on behalf of users, or users can self-service and decide to get content sent to them. So in this case, as Avery was flipping through these different bookmarks on this dashboard that I have access to, simply by clicking on the envelope in the top right-hand corner, I can choose to subscribe to this piece of content in my daily report digest. And I can pick which filter combinations I want to receive within that report, or just the report as a whole. And in doing that, that's instructing Metric Insights to essentially start sending me emails out of the system. And so I have a mocked up email inbox here, but I can start to receive things like a daily report digest, which is going to include any content that I've subscribed to, regardless of the underlying source that it might have come from. Again, pre-filtered to filter combinations that are interesting to me. And what we do in this case is we actually take a snapshot image of the dashboard that we've chosen, again, pre-filtered. It's an accurate representation of that dashboard the last time it updated. We include that image within the email that it's going out to the users. And obviously, you can hyperlink them back into the underlying dashboard to continue your analysis if you see something interesting. So it's very easy for users to come in and subscribe to content that they want to get pushed out to them. Another way they can subscribe is through the concept of what we call favorites folders. So if I go back into my catalog view here, as a user, I can go into my categories and essentially drag and drop content into a favorites folder that is personal to me. And it's really this core set of content, again, that I'm interested in keeping tabs on every day. But in creating a favorites folder, it's also instructing Metric Insights to essentially start tracking that content for me, and doing things like sending me a daily digest email that basically summarizes what's changing within my favorites folder. So in this case, you can see things like, out of my favorites, these are the metrics that moved the most since yesterday. These are metrics that generated alerts and anomalies that I might want to go and look at. And again, these are dashboards that updated since I last received this email. So oftentimes you don't want to send everything all the time. You just want to show things that have updated or had significant events happen within the data. And so favorites digests are a good way, again, of sort of summarizing for a user in a single email, multiple sources of information, what's changed, and in a minute or less, I can scan through this and figure out whether there's things that I want to go and look at in more detail. So, yeah, there we looked at the concept of a user sort of self-subscribing to content. You can obviously do this on behalf of your users as well, so we can set up folders of content and burst that out to users on a schedule or whatever makes sense in your environment. And it tends to be a combination of scheduling content to go out or users self-subscribing to what they're interested in. The final sort of piece to look at is how do we now make this content even more relevant to users? Oftentimes, again, even though it's all in one place and we're distributing it, we're telling you what's changed, there's still a lot of content here that could be interesting to us. However, you'll see when we send this digest email out that there's some color coding going on, that there's some traffic lighting, there's some alerts being generated within this email. And this is where we're essentially tracking the underlying data that's available from each of these tiles and pieces of content that we're interested in. And by doing that, we can start to, if you like, bubble to the top the particular metrics or pieces of information that a user should focus on. So as an example, our Canada daily sales metric here has generated a red alert. If I click on that in my email, it takes me into one of those metric tiles that we were looking at before, where again, we're looking at a daily time series of sales within the organization. We're looking at that across different regions and countries in this case, obviously whatever makes sense for your business. And not only are we reading in the different values as sales updates here, we're also analyzing how that data is changing over time. And so we're looking for highs and lows within the data. We're running a moving average against this data set for all the different countries. We're running statistical analysis against the data. It's looking at a number of standard deviations from that moving average to essentially start to identify high and low outliers within this time series as a way of saying to a user that might be following this tile, something unusual has happened with the data, something statistically significant has happened with the data, and that might be something that you want to drill into in more detail. And so the reason that this metric was included in my digest today was because we found that unusually low value was something that we probably want to drill into. Now, as a user, or again, on behalf of your users, I can also start to create my own alert rules against these metrics. So it's very easy for me to come in and start looking at things against targets or fixed values, or more importantly, looking at trends over time, start to set up alert rules that are interesting to me. So, show me if something is 10% above or below the previous week's average, and define, how I want to be alerted to those sort of things. So is it something that immediately, it's critical that I get this on my mobile device or via SMS, or is it something that I want to be, highlighted in my email digest that I get every day? I can simulate that and look at how many times that alert would have fired previously. And I can define, what is the content that I want to push out, either to myself or users that I'm creating this for. I can define the content of that alert, the message, and ultimately the payload of that as well. So is this the metric that I want to send, or is it the Tableau dashboard or whatever dashboard that particular metric came from? And in doing that, obviously then I can start to, if I jump back to my email, is I can start to receive alerts as well as those digest emails that say, what was the condition that was found. And again, using our image capture here, we capture an image of the underlying piece of content that alert was triggered by. Again, if it makes sense, pre-filtered to the value that triggered that alert. Obviously, again, this hyperlinks back into the underlying piece of content. So, if it's something that looks unusual, I can go in and carry on my analysis. Another type of anomaly that we look at, if you like, is this concept of exceptions and changes within the data. So we'll use our dashboard that we've been looking at all along here. It's not unusual to see dashboards like this down the bottom here, where I have multiple metrics, I have lots of different filter combinations. There's probably 1,000 different combinations of filter values available within this dashboard that I could be tracking and could be interested in. So we can start to set up rules against the data that start to look for how things are changing or what's exceptional within those filter combinations to bubble them up to the top for users. So in this case, we have a rule that's saying, okay, did any of those filter combinations across country, channel, and product have sales that dropped more than 50% day over day? Metric Insights will keep tracking the data behind this dashboard. It will apply any rules that we're interested in. It will look for those changes and start bubbling up these exceptions for users. And as a user, then we can deliver that as a set of exceptions on top of the dashboard, where they can easily come in and start to pre-filter the dashboard by those exception combinations. And again, we've gone from what's probably 1,000 different combinations down to half a dozen exceptions on that particular day that we may want to focus on and look at in more detail. And obviously as well, there's the interactive aspect to that, but that might be something that's important enough that I want to receive that in my email every day. What were the exceptions for the day? And show me an image of the dashboard pre-filtered to each of those exceptions so that I have it in my inbox when I come in the morning. So 2 different types of anomalies and exceptions to look at there. So, time series based stuff, and then exception and change based stuff are ways of bubbling up that content to users so that when they're either in their email or within the portal, we can start to highlight those things for them so they know where to focus their attention and where they may want to go and look at things in more detail. A couple of final pieces to touch on here, and then we'll open it up to any questions. A key piece of what Ben was talking about in his slides was this concept of engagement and making sure people are engaging with the right data at the right time, and that's really what we're trying to achieve here. But how do we know that's happening? Well, behind the scenes, we're actually tracking all the usage of the content that we have within the environment. So who's looking at which reports and dashboards, which alerts are going out and being acknowledged, which reports are being which emails are being sent, and who's clicking on what. All that interaction is being tracked within the Metric Insights platform. And essentially, we're then able to use that as ways of either, again, tracking that interactivity, but also using it to make suggestions and help users where in terms of what they should be looking at. So simple things like, being able to show a user what new content has been published through the portal in the last week or the last month. As you add new things and new dashboards and new metrics, it's important to let users know. So we're able to obviously highlight that for users. We have the concept of, as well as discoverability on content. So when you publish a dashboard, for example, through the portal, permissions probably dictate that certain users have access to it. But if you mark that as discoverable, when a user searches, even if they don't have access, we can make it known that that piece of content is available. So this procurement dashboard is something that's available in the portal that I don't have permissions to see, but I know it's there, and by clicking on it, it's something that I can potentially request access to. And the owner of that piece of content would receive an email to say, can you give access to this particular person if they have the permission to see it. We can make recommendations on the platform. So again, if there's content out there that you think should be useful and should be being looked at, either manually or through understanding what other users are looking at within the portal, we can make recommendations to users to say, hey, your colleagues are looking at these pieces of content. They seem to be finding them useful. You haven't viewed these yet. This is something that you might want to go and look at, might be interesting, might be something that you want to add into your favorites folder. And as an admin or as a content creator on the system, we can track all that usage that is going on. So an example might be from a user perspective, who do we have that's active on the system, who's using it, but more importantly from a content perspective, which content is getting used, what content is increasing or decreasing in popularity. Again, is this stuff that we feel we should be promoting, or is it stuff that's just not useful to our users and it's stuff we can be retiring and not having to support anymore? So, oftentimes our customers, they're publishing a lot of stuff through this portal environment, but it's key to keep it up to date and fresh and make sure that we're only publishing stuff that users are actually interested in, and there's not a lot of noise that is detracting from what's important. The final concept I want to talk about is this concept of content certification as well, and essentially governing what goes out to the user base. Oftentimes we're in large organizations, there's multiple teams effectively publishing content out to the portal, making it available to users. We want to make sure users know what they can trust and what's important, what's been through a process of QA or testing, so that they know the data is correct. And so as a content owner, as someone publishing content through the portal, I have this ability to effectively give it a stamp of approval by certifying or decertifying content that, again, I own. And by certifying content for the end user, what that effectively does is give it a check mark that if I hover over this, I can see who certified it, when it was certified. Ultimately, if you want, filter by certified content within there, so that I know these are the real metrics and dashboards that have been through that process, and I know I can trust this information. Now, customers will sometimes only show certified content to end users. Others will make everything available, but on the understanding that really it's only the certified stuff that they should focus their decisions on. So that's the overview of the platform. And if we go back to the slide that Ben ended on, again, hopefully you can see that your existing dashboards and reporting are very good for that sort of data discovery and interactive analysis of information. But where we really enhance that is by helping users engage with the right content at the right time, by organizing it in a way that makes sense, by helping them automatically uncover what's important, and by distributing and alerting users to that information so they don't have to come in. Let's open it up for some questions, Ben. I think we've got a couple there if you want to read them out.
Yeah, we did have a couple. So the first one is, how do you manage security?
Yeah, so within let's just jump back to the browser here. So within the application, we essentially have a standard user group model, which is synced up with often your security that you have in-house, whether it's Active Directory and LDAP or some other security platform. But essentially, based on a user group paradigm, users have access to different categories of information or different tiles within those categories. If you're syncing up your Active Directory, those groups typically map to categories. So that defines which tiles a user can actually see. And then using a single sign-on approach, when a user opens a particular tool, like the Tableau one we've been looking at, it's passing my Metric Insights credentials through to, or my single sign-on credentials through to that underlying tool. And now I'm logged into Tableau here, embedded within Metric Insights as my user. So it's restricting my access within Tableau as it would if I logged into it directly.
That's great. And so another question is, what are the deployment options?
Yeah, so really deployment can be in two ways. So often, most commonly, customers are taking this and deploying it on-premise behind their firewall, spinning it up in their environment, either as a packaged install on their bones hardware or as a virtual image. We can run in a virtualized environment. We can also put this in the cloud, either as in our cloud, running on AWS or Azure, and running it as a managed service, if you like, a hosted service, or we can provide you the installation to run in your own private cloud on Amazon or AWS or Azure.
And so I think one of the last ones we have is what data sources we connect to.
Yeah, so we've looked at a few. So as Ben said, it kind of breaks down into a number of areas that he touched on in his presentation. So if I go to data sources here within the application, it really falls into a couple of types. So we can connect to underlying databases that have JDBC drivers. We can upload those. We can make direct connections to databases. But then we also connect through particular tools, APIs to particular platforms. So typically breaks down in sort of BI tools, and we connect to all the major BI tools, big data sources, SaaS applications, Google, generic connectors, anything that really has an API that we can communicate with on their side. So JDBC or API based.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions.
All right, so thanks everyone for joining us today. As Ben said, we'll send this the recording of this webinar out. It'll also be published on our blog where you can see previous webinars as well. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.